This is the CUPRA Leon hybrid version, which you can get for a total of 39,000 euros in its basic configuration. This one that we have right here is going to set you back 42,690 euros in this exact configuration. But in this video, we're going to talk about everything and look at this beauty and what it has to offer, and also compare it with the Golf GTE, which we have reviewed previously, which you can check out right up there if you're interested in that. So let's get into the video. Taking a look at the front, first thing you notice is just a stylish and modern looking version of this car. Obviously, the CUPRA hasn't been around for that long, but I think they've done a pretty great job when it comes to that. The front obviously has all these black touches to it instead of having it silver or chrome like in most cars. For instance, the Mercedes that you have in the back right there. But this one, I love the black touches to it. It just makes it look a lot sportier with the aggressive looking CUPRA logo with the carbon fiber behind it. Looks very nice, and also these kind of like half cone shape or honeycomb shapes that go into the light. Looks very nice in my opinion. And then further down we have some more intakes. These are actually two real intakes, and on the side they are fake and they don't actually go through to the wheel, which is one thing that it doesn't do. Standard, you have your LED lights, which are pretty nice, and it's also a couple of sensors in the front, but in general just a very aggressive looking car, which I like. Taking a look under the bonnet, obviously we have the 150 horsepower in here, but wait. Wait. Oh, what is this? It's a beautiful electric engine, which provides you with an extra 75 horsepower for a total of 204 horsepower. Obviously, if you're looking for a little bit more power, you could get the 245 version of the plug-in hybrid, or if you're really trying to gather up those points on your license, just like CUPRA is saying that you should, you can get the 300 horsepower option as well with that beautiful 7-speed dual clutch gearbox, which is very nice, and also a 2-liter engine. This one only has a 1.4-liter engine, obviously turbocharged as well with 4-cylinder, which is pretty nice. It's getting 80 from 0 to 100 in around 7.5 seconds. And again, you're going to have around 350 Newton meters of torque with both of the engines combined, which is pretty nice. But again, nothing in here that stands out especially, because you're just going to have the compact version of having the E motor and also the normal motor in there, so it doesn't look very pretty. So let's just close it up pretty quickly. Taking a look over to the side, first of all, I forgot about the color. We have 10 different colors you can choose from. This is the standard candy white color, which is a pretty nice color in my opinion. But obviously that kind of black or matte grayish color is obviously the best. But those extra colors are going to start you off at around 720 euros extra. But this one is just going to come standard with it, which is, I think the white actually fits pretty nicely with the black. So it looks pretty decent. Down here we have our 18-inch wheels, which do look pretty nice with the black and kind of the silver touch, which looks very nice. And it's also like a matte finish. Pretty cool. And then we have our normal disc brakes in there, not ventilated or anything like that. Further on, you have your battery port where you gotta open the car first. So a charging port actually. So let's take a look at that. So you open it up, you have your battery port in there, which has a total capacity of 13 kilowatt hour, but it's only gonna have around 10.4 actual battery size in there, for a total range of around 62 kilometers of range. And charging this battery of around 62 kilometers range is going to take you at a wall box with 3.6 or 3.2, I'm not totally sure about that one, 3.6 is going to take you around 3 hours and 44 minutes, or you can round it up to 4 hours if you're not going to get the full charging capacity of that all the time. But if you just charge it at your normal power outlet, you're going to get around 5 hours of loading time with that. But in city, it's obviously going to be very nice to drive with just the electric motor, so you can drive from one point to the other without having to actually use your gas, which is pretty nice. So let's move further on. There we go. Up here we have our side mirrors, which are heated. You could also get these in carbon extra, which is an extra, but normally they are going to be in black. That's the standard, which look pretty nice, and they also have your indicators integrated into them. And then further on, you can obviously see we do have the black touches all around once again, with these not being in silver like these side strips, but actually being in black, which is pretty nice. And also your keyless go, so you can open and close the car just by holding it, which is pretty nice. So you can see it opens now. And obviously you can close it again if you just go against it. Obviously you got to have your key close to you. And then further on, standard with every single car or every single option that it comes with, you're gonna have your blacked out rear windows, which is pretty nice. And they also kind of like have like this shark fin at the back, which looks pretty cool. But that is basically it for this side. Further on, we have the exact same brakes, just being on the other side like most cars have. And then further on, we go into our taillights, but let's look at the back to actually see what it's all about. One of the favorite parts of the car as well, in my opinion. Taking a look at the back, the first thing you notice is your infinity or coast-to-coast light, which I think is a very nice touch. And when you open up the car, you can actually see this light up, which you can see right now. And then further down from that, we have our CUPRA logo again, where you go in and then you open up the trunk as well. So you can just flip it over, just like in most Volkswagen autos as well. Cars, I mean. And then the logo, once again, very nice with the copper kind of touch, and also the carbon fiber in there as well, which is pretty nice. And then we have our kind of 3D printed CUPRA logo down here as well, or written out, which is pretty nice as well. I do like that fact pretty nicely. And then further down, we do have our reflectors in there as well. And fake exhaust, not a big fan of that. They do look pretty nice, but obviously them being fake is not the greatest thing. Your exhaust is going to be, well, you're going to have to break it back to actually see where it is. So I'm not going to do that because I kind of want to live further on. But then further on, you do have a kind of diffuser down here as well with these three fins as well, which looks pretty nice. I think in the back, the rear just looks pretty aggressive and very nice with the lip out spoiler up top as well. And a pretty small rear window, but I think it's pretty decent size for such a small car. Well, a decent sized car, I'd say. But let's open up the trunk and see what it has in there. Obviously, with it being the smaller version of the car, you're not going to have that much space. So in total, you're going to have 270 liters, just like this right here. But when you flip everything over and fill it up to the roof, you're going to have 1,191 liters in there, which is pretty decent, I think, for the size of the car. In here, we don't have that much. We have this beautiful first aid kit, which looks pretty nice, and it has very nice feeling to it as well, and just looks nice with the logo. I always thought you have to have your first aid kit in full red, but I guess not. You can have it in black as well. And then you have your loading cable as well. Down here, we do have a mat, which you can flip up. It's actually a mat. Like you can see, it's just the thing you put on the ground when you're painting your room, for instance. I think that's one way of cost saving, but instead it looks better than having it in plastic, for instance, or most of the stuff in plastic. And then obviously you're also going to have your lip in here, just because that's the way the car is laid out. Like I said many times, I'm not the biggest fan of the lips, because when you're trying to load something heavy in there, you're going to have to actually like flop it down. But again, I think for this car it's okay, because you're not going to load anything heavy in here, because it's not the car you go to your local workshop and pick up like 50 planks or something like that. So I think that's pretty doable with that. Let's go on over to the interior, where we can look at some nice stuff. Back seats, that's where we're at, so let's take a look at them. The first thing you notice, well, not the first thing, but pretty comfortable when it comes to the seats. They have very nice material compared to some other cars that we reviewed. Very nice leather in the middle, and then you have this kind of fabric in the actually seating positions. But it feels very nice, and kind of it's like a half bucket seat that we have in the front. We obviously have the bucket seats, but here they're like the kind of like a fake bucket seat with a little bit of an indent, but feels pretty nice. I do like that, and they are pretty comfortable to sit in. Down here we have some mats as well, which every car has. But they're actually in the back, they're kind of like a half mat. So in the back, they're actually material where it's not easy to get them dirty, and you can clean them pretty easily off. Like for instance, you can spill something on there and it's just gonna wipe off. But in the front, we have kind of a fabric that you have on your carpets, which is comfortable if you're sitting in here barefoot, which don't do. Then further on, we have in the middle, we have our middle console, obviously, but we have two climate zones, which you can actually change from the back, which is very nice. Not every single car has that in this kind of range. For instance, Golf GTE didn't have that. And then you also have your USB-C type, so you actually have two in there, but you have no place to store anything in there, so there's no cup, like a cup in there where you can store something in. And you do have a small amount of space in the front seat as well, which is pretty nice. And you can also tickle the front driver by the hole in the bucket seats. Don't do that while he's driving. Moving on over to the side door, we don't have the best fabric when it comes to that. Hard plastic up here on the side, and also down here where the speaker is. The only place where you have some good fabric is actually where you have your hand on, and also your arm, which is leather with a nice trim of kind of this copper stylish color. which is very nice. And you also don't have any piano black piano black color in here, which is nice, which is obviously nice due to the fact that it's not going to stain or anything like that. It's not going to show your fingerprints. And then when you flip this over, you do also have a little bit of storage and 2 cup holders in here. Or 3 actually, I don't know, at the middle, so it's like a perfume bottle, and then in the front you have a bigger bottle, and in the back a smaller one. And you can also flip this over in the back, so you can have, you can put some skis in there as well. But in general, the back is pretty nice with obviously the lights up here, which are touchscreen, just like in the Golf GTE. That's one thing that's basically the same to the Volkswagen. But let's move on to the front, because that's where this special magic happens. Moving on over to the front seat, this is where the magic happens. It happens for me in the car, not in the bed. That's what happens in here. In the center console, we obviously have almost the exact same style as in the Golf GTE. That's due to the fact that Seat obviously is owned by Volkswagen. So some materials are just going to be used over and over again, or some centerpieces, for instance, the center console. You have your gear selector, which looks identical to the GTE, and also your start-stop engine, obviously with the keyless go. That's very interesting, and it's flashing at me like press the button to start, because he wants to go racing. Then we have 2 cup holders in here as well, and some storage space, and also an armrest where you can put your arm on when you're driving. The nice thing about the difference between the Golf GTE and the CUPRA is that this CUPRA has a standard adaptive shock absorbers in there, which is very nice. So it's going to feel a lot smoother when you're driving over bumps and stuff like that. It's a very expensive extra when it comes to the GTE. And also the car feels a lot more responsive when you're driving over bumps and into roads, because you can just feel the road a little bit nicer, and you just feel connected to the road, and compared to the Golf GTE, which is one major aspect, because this is obviously tailored towards racing, and the GT is not kind of that. But then we have a very, very nice steering wheel, because we don't have a single touch sensitive control in here, which I love. That is very nice about the steering wheel, because in the GTE everything is touch sensitive, which I hate. But that also, you can see the exact same lights up here as in the Golf GTE, because it's just a copy paste, just like the center console is. But like I said, I love the steering wheel with some pedals in here, and in the back you do have to go pretty far back to actually reach them. So if you have small fingers, well, that sucks, because you're gonna have something small as well. Up here we have another, just your normal stuff, but we have a full virtual cockpit, which is nice. You could also get a heads-up display. This doesn't have that, but the virtual cockpit and the infotainment system, we'll talk about that in a second. Down here we have inductive loading as well, which is very nice. So you can just put your phone in there, and one thing is it actually goes down, and it doesn't it's not interrupted with anything else, so you can fit any kind of phone in there. You could probably fit the Samsung flip phone in there, which that thing is pretty wide. And then the center, obviously your air conditioning and your emergency lights or your blinkers. And then also one thing you might notice is that we have ambient lighting with 30 different colors going all around the front and also on the side, which look very nice at night, because when you turn on the car, they actually light up at the start, which looks very nice. And I just love how they're laid out up there. Instead of having them right below and through the infotainment system, they actually go up behind the steering wheel, which is just a nice touch in my opinion. And then, not like in the Volkswagen ID.4, which we reviewed, we do actually have 4 buttons for all your windows, which is very nice. But that is basically it for the front seat. Well, wait, I totally forgot about that. The bucket seats, beautiful. I love bucket seats, and they just feel very nice. They're very nicely adjusted to your body. And I think they just fit perfectly. You can obviously also get an upgrade for this, the memory and electric function for the seats, which is going to be, I think, 800 euros extra if you want to get that. But they just feel very nice, with also the very nice logo up on the top for the CUPRA, and very nice material. That is basically it for the front, but let's look at the infotainment and the virtual cockpit. Okay, let's take a look at the digital cockpit first of all. So we press start button, and then obviously it starts up. And then in here we have, because it's digital, you can change a lot of stuff. You can change that via the buttons on your steering wheel, which is pretty nice. So you can, for instance, well, first of all, let's look at the different views. We can change through them. For instance, we have our standard one, which looks pretty decent. You can see everything that you have. The speedometer goes up to 300, even though we can only go up to 220 with this car. And then also on the very far right, it shows you what the speed limit is right now. And on the left, you obviously have your RPMs. And then we can press on it again. We have this kind of like racier kind of style. In the middle, you can change that as well. Let's take a look at the right side. Well, let's change the right side by pressing at the button up on the right. And then we can change with the wheel, we can change, for instance, Apple CarPlay. We can see what song we're playing. We can look at the G-forces that we're experiencing right now. And we can also look at some navigation. We don't have a navigation active right now, so we can't see that. You have a compass in there as well. And again, your Apple CarPlay. And on the left, you can do the same thing. You can, for instance, change some stuff in there as well. How much range you have, your battery, how much fuel consumption you have, your battery once again, and some oil temperature and stuff like that. And your, like, some general information about the car. And then if we look at the middle again, we can look at that, and we can also change that, for instance, to just the standard equipment in there. We can see the navigation, which is pretty nice if you're driving around instead of having to always look to the right. You can just focus on that while also looking at how fast you're going. So that's very nice, which is just going to show you some information about your trip if you have one active, and then also your speed limits in there as well, which is pretty nice. That is basically it for that. Let's take a look at the other view that we have. For instance, we have just this one, which shows you what's in front of you and what's happening all around you. And then we obviously have that again in there as well. And then we just have this standard one, which looks pretty nice. And I think that were all of them, if I'm not mistaken. We did, oh, actually, this is one different one that we also have. Is in the middle, you can see we have a lap timer. So if you're trying to go, for instance, around a lap and trying to see how fast you're going, you can activate the lap timer. And then obviously see how fast you're going around the lap, which is pretty nice. And that is it for that. And back to the standard one. That is everything to the digital cockpit. I think it's a very nice and intuitive design for it, and it works like a charm. So let's take a look at the infotainment system. Taking a look at the infotainment system, or the center display, one thing you obviously notice is that it almost looks the same as in the GTE, because you have these touch sensitive controls down here as well. There's no physical buttons in here, so you have to do everything through the infotainment system, which can be hindering at times because you have to press on multiple buttons to actually reach something, which is not always the greatest. Otherwise, you could just press a button and then you're obviously in that menu. But in this, you're going to have to press through everything. And again, you have these touch sensitive controls down here as well. But let's take a look at, for instance, this is your main display that shows up. I have assigned it to showing the map on the left, then your battery manager in the middle, and also your Apple CarPlay on the right with Liam Gallagher wall of glass. That is what I have set it up for. But then you have your main menu down here as well, so you can select some different stuff. So you can quickly choose between navigation, your radio, your phone, your information about your current trip, some Apple CarPlay, and also some other stuff, for instance, your climate control, which is actually pretty nice. You can change a lot of things in here, in the front, and also you can change it in the back, and you can also make it so that people in the back can actually adjust their own temperature by locking it. And then you also have iClimate, for instance, if you're feeling like, oh, my hands are cold, let's warm them just by pressing that. Or my feet are cold, we can also warm them just by pressing that, and vice versa. And then down here we also have air care climate, so it changes, like it removes all the pollen in the car. If you just open that up, or if you select on it, and then you can see a nice little infotainment or a display on there which shows you, okay, we've cleaned all of this, now you're going to be extra clean. So but let's stop that. And then we have some settings which you can change stuff. One other thing we can look at is if you click on the little car down here, it actually lights up with your lights, which is pretty nice. You can change all your different settings. One thing that is not good is, or not nice, that every time you go back into the car, for instance, your lane assist is always going to be automatically on. So if you're not a big fan of lane assist, you're always going to have to go into this menu every time you start the car and then turn it off. Otherwise, it's going to be on automatically. But we have a lot of, for instance, driver profiles, which you can also make an individual. We have comfort, sport, and then you can obviously make your individual. We have our battery manager and also some recuperation if you want it to be strong or just a little bit less. Ambient lighting, where there is, like I said, 30 different colors. You can change between that. For instance, the wellness, if you really want to fall asleep while driving, not a good idea. And then some other info in there. And you can also just press on the climate to quickly go to the climate control. Also your heated seats you can turn up on there, because there's no physical button for your actual heated seats in here. But that is basically it for your infotainment system. It actually is pretty fast, a lot faster than the Golf GTE, for instance. But that is basically it for that. So in conclusion, would I say the CUPRA is better than the Golf GTE? In my opinion, I would say yes, due to the fact that you have some standard features that cost you extra on, for instance, the Golf GTE. And in my opinion, the overall quality of the CUPRA is just a little bit nicer. Obviously, the GTE is a little bit more expensive as well. So the quality in here actually feels more luxurious than the Golf GTE, which is just a nice thing. And you also have the adaptive shock absorbers, which you don't have on the Golf GTE. They're going to be cost you extra. But in general, I think the color just looks very nice, and it feels very nice to drive as well. So if you did enjoy, make sure to like and subscribe, and also leave a comment if you have any questions about this car or the Golf GTE. You can obviously leave that on the other video. You can also check that out if you want. But that is it. So make sure to stick around and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.